The brain is absolutely ridiculous and one of the least understood aspects of the natural kingdom. We don't even understand how the brain of a worm works, so how on earth are we meant to comprehend our own evolved grey matter? Psychology has only been officially studied for 130 years and we're still making huge discoveries every year. My mum's a psychologist, so I grew up hearing about all this stuff and really took for granted some of the things I'd learned. So like any responsible millennial, I decided to start a podcast about it and share the sweet, sweet gift of therapy. I'm sat on the couch with my mum, Sandy. She's a psychologist with over 20 years experience studying and treating clients. Hi, Mum.
Hi, Adam.
We're going to release a new episode each week talking about a different aspect of mental health and therapy, and hopefully some of you will find it useful. All our episodes are on YouTube if you want to watch us actually sit on our couch in front of the fire. The link will be on our Instagram bio at OnTheSofaPod. Give us a follow if you like the podcast. Rate us 5 stars on iTunes because it really helps us out. And yeah, this week we're talking about
Therapy shopping.
Therapy shopping. Last week we discussed the differences between different kinds of therapists, and this week we thought we'd talk about how to find one. Like, you're like, oh, maybe therapy is right for me. How on earth do you start looking for a therapist?
So, good question. So we've already covered in the beginning what you need. So you've already done that part. You've already worked out what you think you need. And now you've got to find the right person. So we're going to go in a little bit closer to knowing what type of therapist might be best for you. Have you decided, is it a male that you want to work with or a female, and why? So that slims it down a little bit more. So now it's time to Google.
Right.
Or whatever you use. So once you've found a few possible therapists...
But what would you even type into Google? Where'd you start?
Well, let's say that Joseph has, pretend name, has realised that he needs to deal with anger management. It's not a new thing. He remembers having it at school. He's now 35 and he wants to understand why he's like that and how to manage it. So if it's the why that we're looking at somebody that's a bit deeper. So psychology.
They've already recognised that they have this.
We don't think he needs medicine, but we're not sure. And so he kind of knows where to go, really, because of the work he did from the beginning, the first podcast, hopefully.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like working it out like that, isn't it? I need something that goes back in history about me, which is psychodynamic. And I also need to know how to manage it. Now, the counsellor would probably do the management side.
But not necessarily go back.
But not necessarily go back.
What would Joseph type into Google, though?
So, yeah, good question. So, if it was just new anger, you just put anger management therapy.
Or depression therapy, or...
Yeah. Or if it's like we've just said about Joseph, you'd probably put something like long-term anger.
Right, so just being specific with your symptoms, and because I think probably the most common thing is like therapy London, therapy Stafford, or whatever.
Yeah. So just give it a little bit of thought. Is it long term? Has it just started recently?
So do those things that we talked about in the first episode and try and like do a little bit of self-awareness work first, and that will really help you find the right person. What about counselling directory? Is that a big resource?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's quite very popular.
So counselling directory is like Google for therapists.
Yeah, there are lots of good sites. Psychology Today is very good. They've all the therapists on there have been checked out by the sites. So yeah, it's a good place to start. So things to check out with any of the professionals. Qualifications. Now this bit's really important, and you might need a pen and paper.
Give it a second. Go on.
It is important. So be aware that there are different credits to different qualifications. So again, you're looking on the website, you've done your homework on yourself, you're looking on the website and you see one therapist has got PG DIPS, so postgraduate diploma. Okay?
Yeah, got you.
You'll see a lot of this. That takes 2 terms to complete, with modules worth 120 credits. So worth 2/3 of a master's
Got you.
degree. Okay. Then you've got PG certs, so postgraduate certificates. Take one term, and worth 60 credits. So 1/3 of a master's. Masters take on 1 year full time and are worth 180 credits.
So that would just be, what would that be, letters after name?
What would what?
So you've got PG Dips, PG Cert, and then would it just be Masters?
Well, no, I mean, people might want to do a different type of degree.
Okay.
And, you know...
But just check out how many credits there.
How many credits? Can you remember how many credits you got for your undergraduate degree?
My degree was an absolute joke, I'm afraid, so I have no idea.
But you will have got credits.
Yes, 100%. I don't know, I haven't...
It's just interesting to... Because, again, a lot of people don't know this.
Well, no, because you just see, like, oh, they've got, like...
PG,
their letters after a name, and that looks professional to me, and... Yeah, absolutely.
So, find out what they mean.
Yeah, okay. And actually, like, look into the training that do a bit of detective work.
Do they have experience in the issues that you're presenting with? Well, you should already know this now, because you know what you're presenting with. So it's almost like when you're doing a degree, they call it the funnel effect when you're doing your dissertation, for example. And this is very similar. So it's this big at the top, and you're funneling down now to find out what's best for you.
Got you. That would have been great for the people on YouTube. Make sure you go to YouTube, watch this podcast. On the sofa pod. Great arm actions.
How long have they been practicing for?
Okay. Just work experience.
Work experience?
No, as in, like, if they've been practicing for 10 years, they've got a lot more work experience than somebody who's been practicing for 1 year.
Yeah. Do they have sound knowledge about their work when you're talking to them on the phone? Do they have a waiting list? What do their premises look like? And are they local to you? Mm-hmm. Particularly if you're doing face-to-face. But most people now have pictures of their clinic, which is quite useful, particularly if a client is anxious. I would say to them, go onto the website, check out the videos so you can see what we do, check out the podcast that we did on last year. Look at the room. That's the room you'll be going into. It's like a little bit like exposure. Just
so they're comfortable in the space.
And who they can see who they're working with. I mean, it might not be me, it might be somebody else.
Also, it's worth saying that I always thought, and a few of my friends who now see therapy on Zoom, obviously because of the pandemic, before starting Zoom sessions, were really not looking forward to it and said that they were, I think I'll much prefer in person. I'm not sure this is right for me. And after doing them, have I said they actually enjoy them more because they're less sort of all enveloping, and you can actually get on with your day a bit more afterwards, and they're still doing the work, but it's a little less time consuming and it's a lot easier to fit into your day. So because
you don't have the travel aspect.
So don't write off Zoom sessions is kind of what I'm saying. Like, it could still work,
definitely. And it depends on what you're presenting with.
Right.
What systems do they have to keep your data confidential?
Data protection is huge. At this point, can we just say that all therapists, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but all therapists have a duty of confidentiality, and that means that they aren't allowed to discuss any aspect of your therapy or anything you tell them with anybody else unless it's a danger to somebody else's life or you've committed a crime.
If you might be subpoenaed to court, you committed a crime,
So anything you say to them, unless they've committed a really serious crime, it's just going to stay between you. You're not going to speak to any of your colleagues about it.
No.
Like, I'm not going to hear anything that you've said to any of your clients. It really is a very safe space to say things, because it's illegal for the person you're speaking to tell anyone. It's like end of their career kind of illegal. Like, it's really serious.
And that's important to get across, isn't it? That it is confidential. The only other person that you might speak to, we have to have supervision every month. but what we try to do is use a different name.
Yeah, so the confidentiality is still there, but we're making sure that you're doing your job as well, and someone else is checking your work, which is valuable.
Or it might just be a code of some sort.
Right.
Do they have a useful website for you to look at? That's quite good.
Mm-hmm.
Do they carry out a review of their clients? And if so, when is this routinely done? So we talked about that a little bit last time, didn't we? How?
I think so. Briefly, we just said
But
about...
we'll just...
Yeah, we
go
just
back.
briefly said that, like, it's quite right sometimes to say to your therapist, I'd rather review every 5 weeks, 4 weeks, and just take a pause, and for the first 10 minutes of the session, just look over what we've done and look where we're going and make sure we're still steering the ship in the right direction.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to,
Go off
as a
course.
client, to waffle on and actually be targeting things that just don't really matter. And the therapist isn't always going to stop you because they're there to listen to you, ultimately.
And also, if they're person-centred, they would let you lead,
Yeah,
because that's part of the orientation, is to let you lead.
for sure.
So if you want to go not that way but that way, they would just follow you. Whereas somebody else might say to you, particularly CBT, well, they'd try and pull you back, and they'd say, well, actually, we were going to go down this route today.
Yeah.
Are you still okay with that?
But having those review periods and asking who you're going to be seeing for therapy, just confront them about it. Say, not in a nasty way, but are you okay with every few weeks just making sure we book this in?
Yeah, definitely. Roadmaps.
Yeah.
Important, aren't they?
Yeah, having that, making sure that you know where the therapist wants to take you. So almost so you can prepare for the sessions, but so you're aware of what is happening to you, like what direction they want to take it in.
Yeah.
You're in the driver's seat.
And sometimes you might be aware that the following session you're going to be covering a very difficult subject matter, and so you have to build into that. What day shall I have that session? Because I've got an important job on the next day, and I might not have the brain power.
Yeah, it really can be debilitating if you're tackling certain issues.
So you've collated all your research on the therapist. Take time to absorb it. So as you phone each therapist, this sounds terrible, this does, but this is what I would do. Mark down out of 10 how helpful they were and if you could work with them.
Yeah. I mean, the title of this episode is Therapy Shopping. Really, really do shop around.
And that was your idea, that title, and I thought, yeah, that fits the bill perfectly.
Because the first time, just went with the first person.
Well, that wasn't really your fault or my fault, because I knew who I wanted you to go with.
But they weren't available, and this was... She's
become quite famous, and one of her TV programmes had just been on. So it was impossible to get you in there, but they didn't come back to me and tell me that.
Yeah.
They just put you with this other person.
Yeah, for sure.
Without asking me.
But even the second, I didn't shop around per se. I didn't call multiple people because you almost feel embarrassed to. It's quite a strange relationship to have with a person.
But I should have done that for you.
Well, yeah, but I mean, people on this podcast, you can't do it for everyone, can you?
No.
But don't feel embarrassed to call someone and be like, well, do you want to book an assessment in? Not just yet. I'm going to call a few other people and just see who I think's best for me. I'm just going to do some research first, but then I'll call you back and let's book it in. Don't do it the first time, because an assessment session can be very expensive, and you want to make sure that you get the phone interviews out the way first, and make sure that you're getting someone that you really do feel comfortable with.
And I genuinely do say to people, why don't you I don't say shop around, but why don't you phone a few people and see how they respond to your presenting problem, and then you'll feel better about who you choose. Yeah. So I say that to them.
Mm-hmm. The last thing to consider, which is such a big deal for so many people when you speak about this, is like therapy is really expensive. Mm-hmm. Even if you're going to see, if you're going to go to basic therapy, it's going to start, 30, 40, 50 pound an hour. And, all the way, as you said, psychiatrists up to 180, 200 pound an hour and more. Mm. So affordability is a huge thing when you're speaking to these prospective therapists. is the like, does the cost like relate with the ability necessarily?
Yeah.
With the qualifications?
Yeah.
So you charge more as you are more qualified?
Well, yeah, I mean, how long is it? 20 years ago, I was starting off, so I worked for a charity, and I worked for nothing for 2 years, but I was training, and then I charged £10 an hour because the service was in quite a poor area, really. I think it started off at 5 and then 10, and then you just build up with your experience, and you feel you've got so much experience. So for example, what you do 20 years after with a therapy, you couldn't have done that quickly.
Same as any job, same as any skill.
So although it's more expensive, and I think this hopefully will explain why it's so expensive, is because technically it should be quicker.
Yeah, generally. Generally, it's not going to always be the case, but generally you shouldn't be in therapy for a very long time. It should be like, let's get this sorted out and then on your way.
So you could pay for a cheaper version, but it might take twice as long. And
also, you might not need to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Bear that in mind as well. You might be paying £150 an hour and you don't need to be. You're seeing someone who's far overqualified for what you need to need to be resolved.
Exactly.
Also, I think I mentioned in another episode, but if you really truly can't afford the rate that the therapist that you've shortlisted and chosen is asking for, and you're like, this is the perfect person, but I really can't afford that, have the conversation and just say, I think this is a really good fit for me, but I just can't push to that, and see if there is any flex.
A lot of people will do that. And also, I'm not sure if you mentioned it before, but Bupa, if you've got some health insurance, AXA, Aviva.
But usually you'll have an assessment, and then they will prescribe you a set number of sessions, 6 for some issues. I have a friend who literally just said, I'm feeling sad, and they gave him 35 sessions. 35, and he's chuffed. But he's seeing someone for a long time for this, because he said it was work related, and so they sorted it out for him, which is really good. Yeah. And the NHS generally will start off with 6 sessions, but if it doesn't work out in that time, then it can be extended. So there are free options or options on insurance too to look into.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks so much for listening this week.
Yeah.
If you don't follow us on Instagram, it's at On The Sofa Pod. I'm getting there.
You are.
It is, isn't it?
It is that.
Yeah. And we're also on YouTube, so this is going to be on YouTube if you want to watch us there. It's quite decadent to see. And we're going to do a few YouTube videos where I interview Mum. We watch BoJack Horseman, which is a TV show about a very depressed horse. It does it in a very nice way, so Mum hasn't seen it.
No.
We're going to see what she thinks of it. Anyway, next week we're going to be talking about what can I do right now, and like ways to help manage your symptoms until you do get into that first appointment.
Yeah. Okay.
Fantastic. See you next week.
Bye.